But we're going to get to know each other pretty well over the next 15 minutes because we're going to take a fun trip together. Now, don't worry, if you haven't worked out who's going to feed your cat or anything like that, you don't need to worry. You don't so much as need to adjust your seating position because we're going to do it all through social media, or more specifically mine. We're going to meet a friend of mine called Jane and a friend of hers called Verve. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. And it's going to be brilliant. Now, there is no duty free, but I hear it's not that good anymore anyway. So basically, I am a social media junkie. I started to become somewhat mesmerised by how it all worked quite a few years ago when I was advising customers to get on board with social media, which seems crazy today. At that point, really, only Facebook was the main thing we were talking about. But it was really hard to get people to get involved, to get on board with this, which did somewhat blow my mind because it was this free platform that would allow us to connect potentially with customers all over the world. It was difficult to get people on board. And to be honest, as at that time a marketing manager, it was another job on my ever-growing to-do list. So before we meet Jane, who is on the, oh God, left and right, the far one's Jane, the one closest to us is Verve. I wanted to just run through some social media stats with you because I think this is amazing. So first of all, the big hitter. This is Facebook stats. So there are 2.13 billion monthly active users on Facebook and 1.4 billion daily active users on Facebook. This is according to Facebook's own statistics from the end of last year. Now, there's only 7.6 billion people on the planet only, but that's an incredible number of people who are using this platform each month. I think that's completely amazing. This is Instagram. So Instagram, similar to Facebook in the fact it's a social network and actually owned by Facebook, but it's all about the visual quality. It's a very different animal. It has 800 million monthly active users and 500 million daily active users. I'm one of them. There'll be many pictures of this on there later. That's according to Hootsuite. And this here is Twitter. There are 330 million daily active users on Twitter, according to Hootsuite. Now, that sounds like a really small number compared to, Facebook's got over 2 billion and Twitter's only got 330 million. But let's not forget that this is about the same as a population of the United States of America. So it's not to be sniffed at all. It's a real powerhouse. And this is just 3 platforms. We haven't talked about YouTube or Pinterest or Snapchat or LinkedIn or any of the other platforms that are coming to the fore now. The great thing about social media is how it can connect people. Even if you have a really spurious, random niche interest, the chances are that through social media, just because it's a numbers game, you're going to find somebody that's going to connect with you on that level. Now, I thought it would be a really good idea to actually find people with these random niche interests. And when you put your fingers over the keyboard and you start to type into Google, and then the little voice in your head says this is a really, really bad idea. I'm afraid that happened and I didn't actually pursue this that much further. But trust me on this, there are people with very niche interests on any of these platforms. So we're going to now meet Jane. Well, Jane and Verve, but this is Jane. Now, I met Jane, who is lovely, through my own Facebook group on Facebook, obviously, which I run, and we've got over 1,000 members now. Now, Jane doesn't live in this country at all. Jane lives, as you can see, in a much sunnier place. Now, this is where I don't literally live in a pothole, but this is where I live. So this is a kind of snapshot of my village. It's very rural, it's very British. It's on the Worcestershire-Shropshire border. The last census, there were 443 people in my village, and random British things happen there. There was a time that the bullock got onto my driveway after smashing up my fencing. We have the most amazing potholes. And there was also the time that the bats caused a problem with the re-roofing of the church, which seemed to get everybody very, very excited. Now, Jane lives in a place called, she spelled this phonetically, bless her, she knows me too well, Purakanui. I apologise to anyone who's from New Zealand. I'm pretty sure that's not how you pronounce it, but that's how she's told me you pronounce it. Now, Jane lives about 11,890 miles away from me. She lives surrounded by 40 acres of lovely New Zealand countryside, and actually by the inlet that leads onto the sea. Now, as you may know, I work in the equestrian, rural, country and canine sector quite a lot. So, and obviously there's a picture of a horse. So Jane is equestrian, but she's not just horsey. She's actually an equestrian confidence coach, which is quite a niche interest, I'd say. So I was talking to her about my talk, bless her, and I said, it would be really good, because I was trying to think of some examples that would show how indeed social media connects these rural communities and how people find each other through social media. So I was speaking to Jane, and it became evident that actually she lives in a fairly rural community, as do I. And I said, what would be really good, would really help me out, is do you work with anybody that lives in a rural community? Well, she came up with a list of people that worked in a rural community that she met through her social media. But there was one lady who particularly caught my eye, called Verv, who lives in Tromsø. Pretty sure that's not how you pronounce it either, in Norway. And she lives 10,515 miles away from Jane's house. Now, that's Verv riding her horse, pony. That's a reindeer. I know, I love that too. And that looks to me like a pretty rural location. If this doesn't show the power to connect people through social media from rural communities, I really don't know what does. Not only did they get to know each other because they were both horse lovers and both equestrian, but it was through the equestrian confidence niche. I think that's incredible. Have you heard of the 6 degrees of separation? The idea that we're all connected to everyone else on the planet by 6 leaps. Now, in 2016, on Friends Day, Facebook ran some hard maths, I'm sure, and came up with a figure of 3.57 people, there being 3.57 degrees of separation between everybody connected through Facebook, which is, again, amazing. But it's not going to end there. We're not just going to be connected through social media in the way we are now. According to various Googlings, now 95% of the UK population now has access to superfast broadband, and that brings with it a whole host of possibilities. And I'm specifically talking about augmented reality and virtual reality. Now, augmented reality is the things you see on Snapchat and Instagram, so the crazy filters that make you look like a panting dog or have a princess crown around your head. Perhaps not that useful, but that's another story. Obviously, this is going to develop. It's going to move up and move on. Maybe in the future, augmented reality will allow us to project pieces of furniture and new purchases into our homes so we can see how they look before we buy them. But what's really interesting, to me at least, is virtual reality. If I could sit with Jane and Verv around a virtual table and discuss things with them. Now, of course, I could use Zoom and Skype and various things like that, which I do actually when I speak to Jane. But to take it another level, if we could enter this virtual world, this 3-dimensional world, and speak to each other, that would be amazing. And it's not all that far away. Well, I don't think it is. So we can enter a 3-dimensional world, a 3D world, using virtual reality through a virtual reality headset. Again, through some quite serious Googlings. These are actually much more affordable than I thought. And the reason I think they're going to come to the fore even more is because one of the big ones, Oculus, that I love because it makes me think of Harry Potter, to be quite honest, is actually owned by Facebook. And if you wonder about how that can possibly be used on Facebook, there's a there's a system called Facebook Spaces, which is currently in beta at the moment. But the scope is amazing already. You can sit round a table, you can discuss things with people using this virtual world. Facebook gets a lot of stick, and especially recently, it's been in the news an awful lot. And I get that. But I think we need to be aware that no one's making you use any of these platforms. If you don't want to, don't. There are ways you can obviously adjust your privacy and make yourself as protected as you can. But if you're not comfortable, don't. My husband doesn't have any social media platforms at all, and apparently he lives a perfectly normal and happy life. Yeah, he snarled at me when I said that as well. But what it does mean now is that social media and the way it works means that there's no issue geographically. If you want to speak to someone in New Zealand or someone in Norway, you go for it. Geography is no issue, and it's going to become better and better, and I think that's so exciting. Not only is this kind of thing going to help us with our hobbies, but our well-being, our feeling of isolation that can become evident in more rural locations. Even research, there's so much scope here that if we use social media for good in a rural community or further afield, it can be just incredible for us all. I think as well, going back to the virtual reality thing, that's just going to take it to a whole different level. It's going to change the game completely. And the great thing is, as I mentioned at the start, we don't need to leave home to do this. We don't need to worry about who's feeding the dogs or the kids or the cat, or pack all of our liquids into clear plastic bottles. We can just pop on our headset, plug ourselves in, and speak to someone anywhere in the world, in any rural community. And I think that's so, so exciting. Thank you very much for listening to my ramblings. I really appreciate your time.